You are watching the World 24/7 on the NDTV network. I'm Parmeshwar Bava. Let's begin with the headlines for tracking currently. Futures on the Dow Jones were down over 1,500 points and 4% for the S&P 500 on Sunday, amid fears of a Black Monday. When asked about the plummet, Donald Trump said, "Sometimes we have to take the medicine." By the way, the Nikkei 225 has dived now nearly 8%. Donald Trump claims leaders are dying to make a deal. As a top economic advisor to Trump has said that more than 50 countries have reached out to the White House to begin trade talks as US officials sought to defend sweeping new tariffs that have unleashed global turmoil. US oil prices dropped below $60 a barrel on Sunday on fears Trump's global tariffs would push the US and maybe the world into a recession. India and the United Arab Emirates pledged to develop an energy hub in Sri Lanka as New Delhi looks to counter China's growing influence in the island nation. Netanyahu has announced a last-minute visit to Washington to meet Donald Trump, where the Israeli leader is expected to discuss Iran, the war in Gaza, and tariffs with the US president. Our big focus, global investors are bracing for another rocky week after US tariffs began taking effect. Chinese markets faced a grim Monday as Beijing retaliated against the punishing duties, while Taiwan regulators imposed temporary controls on short selling to try and limit the turmoil. Foreshadowing what may come after the opening bell on Monday, Middle East markets, which trade on Sundays, suffered their worst decline since the year 2020. And as far as Wall Street is concerned, which just had its worst week in 5 years, uncertainty is leading firms to call off initial public offerings and denting hopes of deal-making resurgence. The US president denied engineering a stock market sell-off, by the way, and likened the pain of reordering the global economy to taking medicine for an illness. Now, you have to understand why it matters. After plunging on Thursday and Friday last week, global markets sank even further Sunday night, threatening one of the worst three-day routes in history. Investors who spent all weekend hoping for some kind of policy reversal on tariffs realized that none were actually coming and sold off across asset classes in earnest. The dollar continued to weaken, oil fell below $60 for the first time in years, and even tariff safe haven gold sold off. But to understand the larger ramifications, we will go across to Peter Maguire in a few moments. Let's just listen in to what the US president had to say regarding the global turmoil that's been unleashed with these tariffs.
I don't want anything to go down, but sometimes you have to take medicine to fix something. And we have such a horrible, we have been treated so badly by other countries because we had stupid leadership that allowed this to happen. They took our businesses, they took our money, they took our jobs, they moved it to Mexico, they moved it to Canada, they moved a lot of it to China, and it's not sustainable. We're not going to do it.
For an expert's take on the matter, Peter Maguire joins us live at the moment. Thank you so much, sir, for making time for us. The US Treasury Secretary has again dismissed fears of a recession as we speak, saying that the market consistently underestimates Donald Trump. Many suggest this is delusional. But what would you say Wall Street is bracing for a potential repeat of 1987's brutal Black Monday?
Well, good morning, Paramesha. I can certainly remember that day, and I remember it fondly. And I'm not suggesting it's going to be the same as that, but it's certainly, I'm looking at Hong Kong now. I'm certainly taking on board what's happening in Tokyo. Australia's well down, the best part of 4%. But when you're looking at those markets collectively, China, the CSI 300's down nearly 6%. And, you know, as it says there on the screen, 9% for Hong Kong. It's a very brutal day to the downside.
In fact, Peter, billionaire hedge fund manager and also Trump supporter Bill Ackman has warned of an economic nuclear winter if the Donald Trump administration and Trump didn't pause the tariff regime. Do you agree with his assessment? Is it fair?
Well, I don't know if it's totally fair. I mean, I look at last Friday's from a good side story and a good news story. Non-farm payrolls had 228,000 positions added, so that's a good sign. Bond yields are coming down. Crude energy prices, which is wonderful for certainly countries like China and India, is under now $60 a barrel. And I think that you'll see further falls across that sector and significant ones. And as far as the tariffs are concerned, I've got to listen to the likes of Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and, of course, Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, to get their views and objective, I think, opinion across the markets. But it's certainly one at the moment that there is considerable downside risk, and everyone's very mindful of it.
And would you say that global markets are expected to remain spooked for a bit?
Yes, I do. Look, Paramesha, you can't take this sort of pounding over the last couple of days and not have some sort of negative viewpoint. And that's what's happened. It's been, this is now day 3 or day 4 of significant sell-offs. And we've got a long day to go in the sense where it's only, it's early in the morning in Delhi. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon or 12 o'clock noon in Sydney, and we've got all of Asia to run today, then Europe and of course New York to take us over the footprint of that 24-hour window and what Monday represents. So yes, I'm expecting there to be these falls to continue as the day progresses.
Well, Peter, thank you so much for joining us with your view. Not many people are optimistic as we speak at this point. We will, of course, remain in touch with you for regular updates to keep a check on how the global markets are reacting to these tariffs. In fact, more than 50 countries have reached out to the White House to initiate trade talks after reciprocal tariffs were imposed globally on trade partners of the United States. In fact, officials from Donald Trump's administration said they're actually defending the move amid this bloodbath at the US stock market after nearly $6 trillion in value has been wiped out. Trump officials, as we speak, are downplaying the economic fallout and defending the reciprocal tariffs' rocky implementation, as the US president's advisors tried to portray tariffs as a savvy repositioning of America in the global trade order. Just listen in to what the US president had to say. We also have a reaction from the White House National Economic Council director. Listen in.
I spoke to a lot of leaders, European, Asian, from all over the world. They're dying to make a deal. But I said, we're not going to have deficits with your country. We're not going to do that, because to me a deficit is a loss. We're going to have surpluses, or we're at worst going to be breaking even. But China would be the worst in the group, because the deficit is so big and it's not sustainable.
If U.S. consumers are bearing the costs, there's no reason for the countries to be angry. So the fact is the countries are angry and retaliating. And, by the way, coming to the table, I got a report from the USTR last night that more than 50 countries have reached out to the president to begin a negotiation. But they're doing that because they understand that they bear a lot of the tariff.
So the Fed lowers interest rates.
It's not a strategy for the markets to crash. It is not a strategy for the markets to crash. It's a strategy to create a golden age in America for the American worker. That's his strategy.
To take this further, joining us live from New York at the moment, senior journalist Jake Novak. Jake, as always, thanks so much for making time for us. In his latest comments, Donald Trump has insisted that these tariffs are working, describing them as a beautiful thing to behold. He's also said he's spoken to a lot of Europeans and Asians who are dying to make a deal. So as we speak, Jake, is there any room for negotiation, keeping in mind that Trump's baseline tariffs have already kicked into effect?
Well, you'd think so, because everyone is having the pain. If it were just the U.S. stock markets that were down and U.S. assets that were down, then there wouldn't be any room. Everyone would be enjoying this and watching it from afar. But every single market across the world, you just mentioned the Middle East markets, and now the Asian markets have opened down. They're all going down because of these retaliatory tariffs. So it's in everyone's interest to get this solved somehow, to find some way to make another deal to reduce tariffs across the board. And if that means that the foreign countries that are dealing with the United States are going to have to drop some of the tariffs that they use to protect some of their older industries, they're going to have to tell those folks, sorry, our markets are crashing. We can no longer protect you anymore for whatever political connection you have. We have to protect our economies overall. So the fact that every single market that you just mentioned is down means to me that there is absolutely a very strong impetus to come to the table, because everyone's losing right now.
In fact, many experts also have a very pessimistic outlook. Thank you so much, Jake, for joining us with your views on the matter. Do stay on with us for the next update as well. In fact, crowds of people angry about the way Donald Trump is running the country marched and rallied in scores of American cities over the weekend on Saturday, in the biggest day of demonstrations yet by an opposition movement trying to regain its momentum after the shock of the Republicans' first weeks in office. So-called hands-off demonstrations were organized for more than 1,200 locations in all 50 states by more than 150 groups. This included civil rights organizations, labor unions, LGBTQ+ advocates, veterans, and election activists as well. The rallies, you must note, appeared to be peaceful with no immediate reports of arrest. But asked about the protest, the White House said in a statement that Donald Trump's position is clear. He will always protect Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid for eligible beneficiaries. In staying with updates from the US, Benjamin Netanyahu announced a last-minute visit to Washington to meet with Donald Trump. In fact, the US president plans to meet with the Israeli Prime Minister today in what would be their second White House sit-down since Trump's return to office. The visit, confirmed by a White House official and Netanyahu's office, comes as Israel deploys troops in a new security corridor across Gaza to pressure the Hamas militant group. But Netanyahu's defense minister has said that Israel will seize large areas of the territory and also add them to its so-called security zones. Just last month, Israel had actually shattered the ceasefire with a surprise bombardment in Gaza, as we covered on NDTV, after trying to pressure Hamas to accept proposed new terms for the ceasefire, a move supported by the White House. What's tragic is hundreds of Palestinians have since been killed, but Netanyahu's visit follows Trump's shock imposition of 17% tariffs. You must note that the US is Israel's closest ally and largest single trading partner. In fact, the two countries signed a free trade agreement 40 years ago, and about 98% of goods from the US are tax-free. To understand matters better, we have with us Jake Novak joining us on this as well. Jake, many say the timing of this meeting has caught Israeli officials and even some in Trump's administration by surprise, because in the 29 months that Netanyahu's term as Prime Minister overlapped with Joe Biden's term, he met with the US President once in the White House. But today, Netanyahu is scheduled to hold a second meeting in the White House with Donald Trump in just 2.5 months. So how significant would you say this meeting is?
Yeah, this is a very big deal, and it obviously has a lot more to do than with just tariffs and trade deals. I'm sure that'll be part of what they talk about publicly. But this is obviously very much about Iran. Yesterday, Israel's defense minister revealed a document showing that Hamas asked for and got $510 million from Iran to commit the October 7th massacres. So what I think is going to happen at the White House today is that Benjamin Netanyahu and President Trump will announce a brand new series of American-led sanctions against Iran with the added teeth of a warning saying, with this evidence and with what's going on in the last couple of months, if Iran doesn't capitulate and start to defund Hamas and defund the Houthis in Yemen, that they will potentially seek a lot more than just sanctions. I think a very big announcement is going to come out. This is about Iran, and it's not about the tariffs or the trade deal, that's for sure.
Right, Jake, thanks so much for joining us with that quick update. So more sanctions for Iran are on the radar. We'll keep a close eye on that meeting between Netanyahu and Donald Trump. Jake, as always, thanks so much for joining us. By the way, I must also inform you that Iran is pushing back against US demands that it directly negotiate over its nuclear program or be bombed, warning neighbors that host US bases that they could be in the firing line if involved. This is what a senior Iranian official has said. Although Iran has rejected US President Donald Trump's demand for indirect talks, it wants to continue indirect negotiations through Oman, which is a long-time channel for messages between the rival states. As per reports, that path could be rocky. Such talks could begin soon, though, if US messaging supported it. This is what officials are saying at the moment. And with that, let's turn our attention now to battleground Canada, where the Liberals have widened their lead over the Conservatives to double digits among voters as the federal election campaign enters its third week. This is what a new poll shows. The Ipsos poll conducted for Global News released shows 46% of Canadians surveyed would cast their ballots for the Liberals, up 2 points from last week. But to understand matters on ground zero better, we have with us Maha Siddiqui joining us at the moment. Maha, take us through all that we need to know. We understand that as per a latest Ipsos poll, Liberals have widened their lead to double digits over the Tories.
Well, absolutely. The Liberals are entering the third week of the campaign on a strong footing as well. And the reason remains the same. Donald Trump and the threats coming in from the US with regards to not just the sovereignty of Canada, though we haven't heard much on that count from Donald Trump in the recent past, but that fear of their identity being taken away remains a talk here, remains a point of conversation and a very big issue as far as the election campaign is concerned. But the bigger overarching concern definitely is the trade war with the US. And here's where the Conservatives have not been able to pivot their campaign. They were focused too much on the domestic issues, and they were not able to quickly move on to the other big issue, that is the US, the trade war with the US in time in January. Whereas at that moment, the Liberal Party took charge because it is in government, and therefore the people view them now as more favorable in being able to take on Donald Trump, and especially the current Prime Minister, Mark Carney, the incumbent, who is a banker, who was the former Governor of Bank of Canada, Governor of Bank of England, being seen as a person who can take on Donald Trump. So clearly, this is the major issue why the Liberals have seen this kind of a remarkable comeback. No parallel really being found to the kind of success that they have seen over the last 100 days. The only single parallel that now is being quoted is that of the Freedom Movement Party in Slovenia that made a bigger comeback, something of this nature, almost 25 points, going 25 percentage points up during the last few days of the election campaign. As far as the polls are concerned, Parameshwar, apart from what we are seeing Ipsos say with regards to Canada, The Economist has also come out with a forecast. This is not a nowcast, which means it's not talking about if elections were to be held today, who would win. They are talking about a forecast for the 28th of April. And what they are saying is that the Liberals have an 83% chance of getting the maximum number of seats, right, and a 73% chance of getting a majority.
As always, Maha, thank you so much for joining us with the Lowdown live from Vancouver. Well, news and updates continue right here on NDTV. We're slipping into a very short break for now. Back in a moment. Do stay tuned.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news, is here.
More news that matters.
Big exclusive, Tulsi Gabbard.
All the parties should accept their verdict with all humility.
Why the opposition to it? Why taking big steps?
More debates that shake the system. More exclusives you won't find anywhere else. Not just another prime time.
Hello and welcome to The Southern View. I'm Veera Raghav.
This is the news break and I'm Vasudha Venugopal. This is The Last Word and I'm Maria Shakil.
Left, right and centre, and good evening and welcome.
It's a prime time that's unmissable.
I've been reporting on all issues, big and small, from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I bring in that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dravidian heartland.
The land of Mishti is also known for its bitter politics. I have seen much water flow under the Howrah Bridge, covering Bengal in all its vivid colors.
How often have you turned away from debates that descend into endless fights? We bring you a show where every question is answered, where every debate finds its resolution, where every story finds its conclusion, where opinions collide but facts prevail, where stories unfold with insights and trust. When the noise ends, the last word begins.
One of the worst earthquakes hit Thailand recently, and the tragedy is still unfolding. 72-hour window is quite crucial, and it is fast approaching. And as soon as that window is closed, it will be really difficult to find somebody alive from that rubble. I count at least 8 to 10 cranes. These are huge cranes that are being used to shift through the rubble. Last morning, they had spotted one person who was reportedly alive.
Majority of the people who is in these ruins could be around 70 to 80 people.
So authorities are saying that they have the mechanism, they have the techniques in place to rescue the people. It all boils down to hope and courage.
Well, among the important takeaways from Prime Minister Modi's fourth visit to Sri Lanka as Prime Minister was the tripartite agreement, also involving the UAE to develop the coastal district of Trincomalee in the country's northeastern part as an energy hub. Announcing the project in the traditionally Tamil majority area, which will include a multi-product pipeline, our Prime Minister said that all Sri Lankans will benefit from it. Gauri Dwivedi takes you through the key takeaways from Prime Minister Modi's Sri Lanka touchdown.
Prime Minister Modi's three-day visit to Sri Lanka has come to an end with some very important highlights and takeaways, essentially falling into three broad themes. One of greater economic integration, which is why some of the projects that he launched fell into that category, that theme, which is the railway station in Anandapura, the solar power project that he inaugurated virtually, all of that falling into the priority area of India to ensure greater economic integration. The second key theme of the visit has been around strategic convergence between India and Sri Lanka with respect to their larger goals in the area. And the military engagement, the framework, falls in that category, and addressing one of India's core concerns around the fact that there have been these Chinese research vessels, quote unquote, that have been loitering very close to Sri Lanka's maritime waters. What are they doing there has been the lingering suspicion for India. The military framework, when it comes into shape, will address those concerns of India. And the third other theme in which some of the key takeaways and highlights of the visit have fallen is the civilizational connect that has been strengthened. The visit to the Mahabodhi temple falls in that category. The fact that even when Prime Minister Modi started his visit, he did speak about the civilizational connect, the deep bond between India and Sri Lanka. So essentially, these three have been the key highlights of the visit of Prime Minister Modi, the three-day visit coming to an end with the launch of those projects. Anandapura also had an important aspect about the fact that it is the ancient capital of Sri Lanka, again building on to the connect that is between India and Sri Lanka.
Switching tracks, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that Russia is refusing to accept an unconditional ceasefire in order to keep launching missile strikes from the Black Sea. Mr. Zelensky emphasized that a ceasefire at sea isn't just about navigation or food exports, but also about preventing further escalation. Listen in to his remarks.
Україна погодилась на пропозицію Америки, на пропозицію повного, безумовного припинення вогню. Путін відмовляється. Ми очікуємо реакції Сполучених Штатів. Досі її немає. Очікуємо реакції всіх в Європі, всіх у світі, хто хоче миру.
Well, from Ukraine, let's turn our attention now to France, where the leader of the National Rally Party, Marine Le Pen, told supporters she would not give up despite being found guilty of embezzling European Union funds and being banned from running for office. But large-scale protests against the move did not materialize on Sunday. We have a reaction from Marine Le Pen. Listen in.
Voilà donc qu'il faudrait m'éliminer de la vie politique, sans voie de recours possible, au nom d'un soi-disant trouble à l'ordre public démocratique, concept purement et simplement inventé pour l'occasion. Pardon, mais le principal et même l'unique trouble à l'ordre public démocratique, c'est bien celui qui consiste à empêcher l'unique souverain, le peuple, de s'exprimer.
Well, Pope Francis, meanwhile, has made his first public appearance since he was discharged from hospital 2 weeks ago. The 88-year-old was seen entering St. Peter's Square at the Vatican in a wheelchair to greet cheering crowds over the weekend. So what's next? Well, currently as we speak, it's unclear how often the recovering Pope will appear in public in the coming weeks, with Easter Sunday just 2 weeks away. And finally, Bollywood beats and Scottish pipes. Meet UK's Scottish Hindu pipe band. Founded by followers of Hindu spiritual leader Sri Muktajivan Swami Bapa, this band brings together military discipline, traditional Scottish instrumentation, and Indian cultural pride.
Hello and welcome to Out of Britain. I'm Radhika Iyer, and I'm coming to you from an extremely ornate, in fact, the world's first eco-friendly temple in the United Kingdom. You heard it. And I'm going to show you some extremely exciting visuals. Let's first listen in. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the Sri Muktajivan Swami Bapa pipe band, taking the internet by a storm. This is a band which is such an excellent example of fusion. When India decides to exchange culture, this is what happens. Repertoires from Scottish Highlands to Indian music being formed as part of this band's cultural exchange. I'm going to let you listen to the sounds while I'm going to bring you the history of who these people are. Sri Muktajivan Swami Bapa Pipe Band. Oh, that was so lovely. So lovely. With me is Samir, who's going to tell us just why and who decided to have Indians, Hindus, with this beautiful tilak on your forehead, but wear a Scottish kilt. How very exciting, unusual, innovative is that?
Thank you so much for investing your time in watching. We'll be back tomorrow. Do stay tuned.
Do you really know the company you invest in? What is the real picture behind presentations and claims? Is the outlook as rosy as the company claims? Know Your Company, powered by NDTV Profit Research, shines a light on the biggest stock market movers.
News is not just headlines, it is what impacts you. And news should never be mistaken for noise. What matters is the reality. Accurate, in-depth, and with the right perspective.
For over 20 years, I have been a journalist, and never has clarity mattered more than now. At Newsnight, we go beyond the surface. We dissect the details, challenge the narratives, and
hello and good morning. Welcome to Breakfast Show. I'm Radhika Ramaswamy joining you from Mumbai studios. We also have Divya Vadva joining us from Delhi. Divya, multiple petro